From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. We start in Mexico, where the president has once again said his government is willing to help mediate peaceful dialogue to resolve the political situation in Venezuela.
We have proposed that the parties sit down to talk, which is the best thing they can do. To seek a peaceful solution to the political situation, we want a peaceful solution of this dispute. That's the stance of our foreign policy, and we are willing to help for these talks to take place.
This announcement follows a request from the Venezuelan president on Saturday when he called on the leaders of Mexico, Uruguay, Bolivia, and the Caribbean to help create a table for peaceful dialogue in Venezuela. Maduro was referring to the Montevideo Mechanism, an initiative proposed by the leaders of those nations 2 months ago, but quickly rejected by the opposition.
I call on the Mexican president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, on the president of Uruguay, Tabaré Vázquez, on Bolivian President Evo Morales. I call on the prime ministers and presidents of the 14 CARICOM countries to once again lead the initiative for peaceful dialogue, which began in Montevideo 2 months ago. Venezuela asks for support to start a dialogue for peace and understanding between Venezuelans.
The Venezuelan foreign minister said the Montevideo Mechanism is the most sincere initiative to resolve the political situation in the country. Calling for its reactivation on social media, Jorge Arreaza said that dialogue is the way to solve problems, not violence or war. Libyans held a protest in the capital Tripoli against the advancement of troops loyal to military officer Khalifa Haftar. Citizens rallied on Monday in Tripoli's Martyrs Square. The protesters condemned Haftar and his so-called army, describing it as a group of war criminals bent on installing a military rule. All of this happened as an airstrike has forced the closure of Libya's only functioning airport. Some reports suggest that the attack at Tripoli's international airport was carried out by the Libyan National Army. At least 25 people have been killed so far, with 80 wounded as a result of fighting in the south of the capital. Meanwhile, the head of Libya's Eastern Parliament, Aguila Saleh, said the battle in Tripoli was to expel the armed forces that have, quote, kidnapped the capital. Last week, the Libyan National Army, led by Khalifa Haftar, advanced west of Tripoli. Battles for the capital have been ongoing for days.
Therefore, in implementation of the constitutional declaration and the parliamentary decision to vacate the capital from the armed groups, and in accordance to the political agreement that states that these militias are kidnapping the capital, the Libyan National Army moved to the capital for one target, that is to expel these armed groups who have kidnapped the capital.
And the United Nations has said it will never give up on supporting the Libyan people. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says that the organization is determined to ensure that the Libyan National Conference takes place. This conference is meant to prepare Libya for elections and make certain that it happens on time. This election could serve as a way out of Libya's 8-year war since the US-backed coup overthrew the late President Muammar Gaddafi. A Saudi-led coalition airstrike near a school in Yemen's capital, Sana'a, has killed at least 13 civilians. Nearly 90 others were wounded. Most of the victims were students at an all-girls middle school. Many of them were killed or seriously injured after a stampede, which was triggered by the blast.
We went back to the classroom after the break. Then the enemy aircraft dropped the bomb and everyone wanted to run home. I saw 4 or 5 people trampled to death and 11 injured. It was very noisy and crowded in the school. People were running over the bodies and those who fell. And then I came to the hospital, and many of us here feel some tightness in our chest.
Meanwhile, the health ministry in Sana'a has declared a state of emergency following the latest cholera outbreak. According to official statistics, 327 cholera-related deaths and more than 160,000 cases of infection have been confirmed. Over 30% of the cholera cases are among children. Since April 2017, there have been 2 severe cholera epidemics in Yemen, killing more than 3,000 people. Yemen's 4-year civil war has been blamed for causing the epidemic.
This horrifying outbreak started more than 3 weeks ago on a very large scale. Our center has been working 24 hours a day, and we are doing everything we can to treat patients from various provinces. The direct cause of the epidemic is water and food contamination, caused by the overall environmental pollution.
Thousands in Brazil mobilized to demand freedom for the former Brazilian president Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva 1 year after he was jailed, barring him from running in last year's presidential elections. More than 10,000 people gathered in Curitiba, the city where Lula is imprisoned.
Brazil's social organizations and progressive movements held a massive demonstration in Curitiba on Sunday, April 7, to mark the 1-year anniversary since former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva was imprisoned, a fact that stopped him from running in last year's presidential elections, despite the strong lead he held in all opinion polls. Over 10,000 people rallied in front of the federal police headquarters where Lula is imprisoned to demand his freedom and reject the policies of far-right President Jair Bolsonaro.
He fought for the poor. He wanted people to study. He promoted the Maria da Penha law, the only law to protect women in our country. That law is not the basis for other laws in other countries. He comes from the same place as us. He's one of us. He can't stay in jail. He has to be here with his people.
Today marks 1 year since he was in prison, a leader who ruled for the poor, who ruled for the majority of workers. That is why he was persecuted and barred from running for office. If he would have been a candidate in the last elections, today we would not have a fascist president that rules for the rich, for bankers, and represses social movements.
Lula sent a letter to supporters in which he reminds them that there is no evidence proving his guilt, adding that, despite being separated from his family and friends and not allowed to give out any interviews, his voice won't remain in silence thanks to the millions who support him in Brazil and around the world.
Lula represents hope for the people. He was a president who promoted social inclusion, people's rights, and the integration of Latin American countries. The people who were against that, who did not want the people to have power, were against Lula. He was jailed so that he could not continue with these policies. He was put in jail so they could take away people's rights.
1 year after his unfair imprisonment, our duty is to set Lula free so he can lead our resistance. I think we are in a better moment than 1 year ago. The far-right government is losing popularity among workers, so I think we are ready to start a meaningful resistance to set Lula free and bring democracy back, not only to Brazil, but to all Latin America.
Demonstrations in support of Lula's freedom took place in several Brazilian cities and around the world. During the event in Curitiba, left-wing leaders said that only the people could reverse the injustice the former president is suffering, and congratulated members of the Lula Libre Vigil who have been protesting in a makeshift camp in front of the Curitiba prison since Lula was taken there 1 year ago.
The social Minga leaders in Colombia have announced they will go on a national strike on April 25th. During a press conference, indigenous, campesino, and Afro communities said the protest will continue in order to monitor the progress of the agreements reached with the government on Saturday. They also said that the communities will go on a strike joined by other sectors of society, such as students. The social Minga protests ran for almost a month, demanding that the government fulfill several agreements outlined in the 1991 Constitution. The Sexual Abuse Survivors Network in Chile has launched a map for sexual abuse and crimes committed by Catholic Church members. The interactive app was launched on Saturday at the Museum of Memory and Human Rights, complete with the names of the aggressors and the locations of the incidents. The network's spokesman, Helmut Kramer, called on President Sebastián Piñera to create a commission for truth, justice, and reparation to investigate the abuses in Chile's history. Entrepreneurs from around the world are expressing interest in investing in Bolivia. This coming out of an annual investment meeting in the United Arab Emirates. Bolivia's President Evo Morales is taking part in those high-level talks. He tweeted that the country enjoys a growing and stable economy. In particular, Morales spoke about the strength of Bolivia's agriculture, mining, oil and energy industries. During Morales' 3 terms in office, Bolivia's GDP has reportedly grown 5-fold, as extreme poverty has been reduced from nearly 40% to just 15%. We'll take a short break now. Don't go away.
Who's moving the chess? What interests motivate the actors behind the event?
Se despliega el tablero.
Uncritical Moves investigates every event from Monday to Friday. Only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The Ministry of Health in Barbados is preparing a document to take to Cabinet, which will provide free healthcare to CARICOM nationals who reside in the country. This was revealed by the Health and Wellness Minister. He made the announcement as he delivered the feature address at the opening of the World Health Day activity, which was organized by the Pan American Health Organization. The theme of the World Health Day was Universal Health, Everyone, Everywhere. Jeffrey Bostic said this was consistent with the policy goals of the Barbados government, which prioritizes providing universal access to high-quality health care.
So that we will have a policy in relation to the treatment or providing the provision of health care for all CARICOM residents, whether or not they are skilled nationals who reside in Barbados, because we believe strongly that a threat to public health does not only come from those who call themselves Barbadians, but from all those who live, work, reside, and even pass through here on cruise ships.
Authorities from the Caribbean islands of Anguilla and Montserrat have launched a fishing project focusing on climate change. The goal is to improve the sustainability of fisheries and conserve the marine environment. The fisheries sector in both islands is particularly vulnerable to the effects of climate change, including the intensity of storms and the rise in sea level. Coral reefs, one of the most biologically diverse ecosystems, are essential for coastal communities, and they are under threat all over the world. Our correspondent in St. Lucia, Alison Kentish, reports about a local project to stop the destruction of reefs.
Worldwide, coral reefs are being destroyed by pollution and overfishing. In St. Lucia, the Sandals Foundation has teamed up with partners that include the Fisheries Department to undertake reef restoration. The project involves the planting of coral fragments on underwater trees in a coral nursery. Environmental Officer at the Sandals Foundation, Bianca Young, is one of 2 divers who recently assessed developments at the nursery, which is located in the southern Soufrière Marine Management Area, St. Lucia's largest marine protected space. Reefs are important for small-scale fishing and St. Lucia's ecotourism offerings, and the project hopes to ensure that the ecosystems can continue to provide food and livelihoods to communities. Young says fusing coral fragments onto the reef is a tried and proven technique for reef restoration.
This coral restoration project is vital to the coral ecosystem here in St. Lucia, but also within the Caribbean and around the world. And the technique that is being used is very successful, and we're seeing success rates in the 95% percentile range. That means the coral that is actually propagated it's surviving once it's being outplanted onto the reef, and it is creating an atmosphere and an environment for juvenile fish, for instance, and to be able to have an environment where they can grow and support tourism as well as fisheries.
Fisheries biologist Alena Joseph says coral reefs are home to hundreds of organisms, protect coastlines, and provide recreational opportunities for countries dependent on tourism.
We recognize the importance of our corals to fisheries, not only to our fishers, but also to divers and persons utilizing the marine environment. So ensuring that our corals are healthy through restorative activities, through coral nurseries, will augur well in terms of fulfilling the priorities within the Department of Fisheries.
In the last decade, coral bleaching and climate change events such as more frequent and intense storms have also taken a toll on the reefs. The partners are hoping that this project will underscore the importance of healthy coastal environments to human life and spur ongoing support for sustainable conservation of coral reefs. Alison Kentish, Telesur, St. Lucia.
In other news, Israel is set to go to the polls on Tuesday, April 9th for legislative elections. The vote can be seen as a referendum on support for long-serving Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu's Likud party appears to be trailing the Blue and White Party, led by former Army Chief Benny Gantz. However, a poll published on Friday indicated that the far-right nationalist bloc, including Likud, is leading the race for the Knesset. Netanyahu has been embroiled in corruption scandals since December 2016, and he remains under investigation. Just prior to the polls opening, Prime Minister Netanyahu has pledged to annex the Jewish settlements in the West Bank. The move could be construed as a cynical appeal to right-wing nationalist voters. However, the Israeli PM has long supported expansionist policies and dismissed the rights of the Palestinian people.
So his declaration is not just in the heat of electoral or electioneering campaigns. It is a statement of determination and policy. He is going to annex the settlements, all of the settlements. He's going to maintain his control over the Jordan Valley and annex it. And he's going to place the Palestinians in what he calls population centers, but under Israeli security. And he's going to maintain his illegal annexation of Jerusalem. This is the end of any chances of peace.
And Israeli armed forces conducted a raid overnight in the occupied West Bank in which they detained the brother of the Palestinian resistance icon Ahed Tamimi. 15-year-old Basim Tamimi was taken from his family home in the village of Nabi Sali near Ramallah. The incident was recorded and posted to his mother's Facebook page, who said that the Israeli army is trying to break the will of her family. Israel is yet to provide a reason for his detention.
أي سؤال بسألك التزم حق الصمت تتوقعش يما
Sudanese protesters have urged the military to back calls for President Omar al-Bashir to resign. Demonstrators have been chanted, "When the army is here, we have no fear." The army has not intervened since the start of protests in December. Protesters have camped out around the army headquarters in Khartoum since Saturday. Rwanda's president has said the country has become a family once again while marking the 25th anniversary of the genocide that killed about 800,000 people. Paul Kagame lit a remembrance flame in the capital Kigali. Rwandans will mourn for 100 days. That's equivalent to the time it took for about a tenth of the country to be massacred in 1994. Most of those killed were minority Tutsis and moderate Hutus. Attackers were of the ethnic Hutu forces. Some historians have traced the violence to divisions created by colonialism.
In 1994, there was no hope, only darkness. Today, light radiates from this place. Our bodies and minds bear amputations and scars, but none of us is alone. Together, we have woven the tattered threads of our unity into a new tapestry.
We have more stories coming up. We'll be back.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. U.S. President Donald Trump has designated the Iranian Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization. This decision marks the first time that the U.S. has formally labeled another country's military as a terrorist group. In response to the provocation, Iran's Supreme Security Council has put the United States military on its own list of terrorist groups. The United States has imposed sanctions on figures associated with the IRGC in the past, as it seeks to limit Iranian influence in the Middle East. And Iran's Revolutionary Guard is a special army unit tasked with protecting the country's Islamic Republic system of government. Their role includes preventing foreign interference, and they play an important role in controlling the Persian Gulf. The U.S. joins Saudi Arabia and Bahrain in declaring the group a terrorist organization against a background of Gulf power struggle. Now to Europe, the British Prime Minister Theresa May is to visit the German Chancellor and the French President on Tuesday in a last-ditch effort to secure EU support for another extension to Brexit. European Union foreign ministers are meeting in Luxembourg ahead of Wednesday's summit that will decide on May's request for a delay to Brexit until the end of June. Several foreign ministers have said they will support the extension, but France has voiced strong doubts. And much will depend on the possibility of an agreement with Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party on a new approach to leaving the EU. After several meetings last week, it is unclear if there will be more talks on Monday. So far, the Labour Party has said that it needs to see a real will to compromise on the part of the government. The biggest issues for the Labour Party include a commitment to a customs union and a possible second referendum.
Well, at the moment, we're waiting to see what the government is putting on the table as a proposal. All they've done so far is to indicate various things, but not to change the political declaration. So the ball's in the government's court. We need to see what they come back with. And when we do, we will take a collective position on that.
And the EU's chief Brexit negotiator met with the Irish Taoiseach Leo Varadkar in Dublin to discuss Brexit developments. The head of the Irish government said that any country vetoing a Brexit extension would not be forgiven by other members of the bloc. However, Varadkar also said that an extension that serves only to increase indecision and uncertainty should be avoided. A no-deal Brexit could have devastating repercussions for the Republic of Ireland. An investigation carried out by the Centre of Opinion Studies has revealed that almost 80% of Catalans support a referendum to decide their future as a country. The investigation asked Catalans about this option, and 78.7% approved the right to self-determination. Nearly 60% were very much in favor, and just over 20% supported the proposition. Also, nearly 7% were not in agreement, and nearly 8% were very much opposed to self-determination. A street theater festival in Venezuela has started, bringing different forms of performances, arts to communities, schools and hospitals across the country.
After weeks of attacks on Venezuela's power grid, water is still one of the people's biggest concerns, but that doesn't stop them enjoying their Sunday as theater takes to the streets.
This festival is different. The idea is to take theater, culture, art into the communities. We want our children and adolescents to enjoy what this festival has to offer.
On the makeshift stage, acrobats, magicians and clowns all contribute to the show.
We want to get people in the community who may not have much access to this kind of thing to get to know and enjoy our performances.
In the coming days, young artists like this will be performing in more than 400 communities across Venezuela. Many of them see street theater as a right.
Our constitution says culture is a right. Access to cultural and leisure activities is a right for all Venezuelans. These activities should be fun, but they should also bring awareness to kids. It allows them to come together and be creative. It gives them a space to live in peace.
As the nation recovers from the attacks on its electrical system, citizens find respite in cultural activities without ever letting go of their fight for resistance.
With that, we come to the end of this news brief, but you can find more on these stories by going to our website, telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, you can find us on Starsat channel 461 in South Africa and 539 in Nigeria. And you can join us on social media. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.
Huele a pao.